It was day 12 of the Karen Read trial yesterday. I'm going to give you part 2 of my daily recap. So Allie McCabe is on the stand. She is here. She's 20 years old and she's the daughter of Jen and Matt McCabe. Brian Albert and Julie Albert, her aunt and uncle, and that is their house at 34 Fairview. So she is the person who goes to pick up Colin Albert the night that John O'Keefe died. We had a lot of really monotone witnesses yesterday and today, and she is a little more animated in her answers, but they do still seem a little bit scripted and rehearsed. When she answers, she does look over to the jury, which is pro move. So Mr. Lally begins questioning her about the text messages between her and Colin Albert, and we're gonna do like a little sidebar. The jury goes out. They want to introduce these text messages as evidence, so they need to talk about it a little bit beforehand. Eventually the jury comes back in and they are going to be admitted. The judge lets the jury know that you have to assume that the name that says Colin Albert is actually linked to his phone number, and if you don't assume that, then you can't enter this stuff into your judgment, basically. So there was some stuff that happened while the jury was out, but I'll get into that because it's all covered when the jury comes back in. This is what's entered into evidence. Basically, this is in the blue, it's Allie McCabe, and in the white, it's Colin. We do see the opposite of this today or the next day, so I'll show you guys that in my recap for tomorrow. But at 11:55 p.m., okay, I'm driving people home now because he wants to get a ride around then. He says, get me after. And then at 12:10 here, and he says that he goes right outside, okay, at 12:10, and basically that's how it went down. 2 photos of Colin Albert are also entered into evidence. They were taken on February 11th. She testifies to that and says that they were celebrating one of her cousins coming home from the Marines. So they all went over for a party at the house, and Colin was there. There are 2 pictures of them and other family members taken in the library of the Albert home. Mr. Yannetti does the cross exam for the defense. He is wanting to get down to the bottom of the text messages and asking Allie, are these the actual screenshots? And she says yes. She's also asked if she ever gave a screenshot of the conversation, these text messages, to her mother. There's an objection and we don't get the answer to that, but basically she did not turn over any screenshots to any investigators for a long time. So finally, in 2023, the screenshot of the text conversation with Allie and Colin is handed over to investigators. This is well after she knew she had the screenshot, and this is after she had upgraded her iPhone, which is very common for this family too. So while the jury was out, Yannetti had been asking if she knew how to delete text messages on her phone. She said she does know how to delete them. She knows how to you can hold it down and say haha. They both have iPhones, so she knows how to do that. She also states that she doesn't know how to change the time, but supposedly, I learned this for the first time, you can go into settings on your phone and change the time zone so it will change the time. And he asked if she knows how to do that. She said she's never heard of that. Did you know that you can change the date and time on a photo in an iPhone? She says no, but I just learned that for the first time yesterday too. So something else that we learned is that Allie McCabe was only ever interviewed over Zoom with the state police, and her family was present at home while that interview was happening, and Yannetti wants to know if her mother was in the room with her, and we get an objection. So I am not sure if she knew that the Life 360 data was going to be brought up, and this is where Yannetti starts questioning her about that. Life 360 apparently is an app that you can have on your phone that will basically act as a tracking device, kind of like Find My Friend, so that your family knows when you arrive home. Or apparently she had a bubble around Canton High School and her home, so it would alert her family when she arrived in those places. Yannetti wants to know the specific path that she took when she was driving Colin home, and she kind of panics at this point. She's not good with street names or directions, she says, even though she grew up in Canton and this is her family's long-standing home. Something that I'm going to mark as important right here is he asks her if she drives through the center of Canton past the library, and she says yes. I read somewhere else that we know that the library has security cameras, so I'm wondering if he's going to bring that up eventually. We start going into the Life 360 data, and I had to bring up my notes because there's a lot of specific times to refer to. At 12:04 a.m. she arrives within her home circle, but it's also stated then at 12:10 she arrives at the Albert home at 34 Fairview. At 12:09 a.m. she leaves her home. We have at 12:23 a.m. she completes a 7-mile drive where she has a top speed of 42 miles an hour. And then she is seen leaving her home bubble again at 12:23 a.m. 12:26 a.m. she leaves the home. She doesn't recall, and it says that she arrives at Canton High School, so I think that there's a bubble around her home and Canton High School, so that's where it pings really. Then she arrives back home at 12:29 a.m. You guys know I'm not very good with the green screen, but none of this corroborates what she's already said to Mr. Lally. We have a few other long rides. A 12-mile drive at 12:31 a.m. At 1:08 a.m. she's seen leaving the home bubble. Then she arrives at Canton High School at 1:28 a.m. and at 1:30 a.m. she finally for the night arrives home. Her original testimony was that she picked up Colin at 12:10, immediately took him home, and immediately went home herself. So Yannetti is done here with his cross-exam. We get back to the redirect with Mr. Lally. He states that like, oh, you got your new phone around Christmas, so it could possibly been a Christmas gift. And she was like, well, yeah, of course. But it's another kind of just crazy coincidence that they've all upgraded their phones. We also hear that this is a little like sticky situation because Mr. Lally asks her if she's received harassment regarding things in this case. And there's an objection, and she overrules the objection, the judge, and basically lets in this evidence that there has been harassment by bloggers, and Allie McCabe starts breaking down crying on the stand. So the harassment has come from bloggers, and there's all kinds of speculation that Colin was at the home, and she says Colin wasn't even at the home when John was there. And it was a big head-scratching moment. Apparently John was there. Nobody else has said he was there. So what are you saying now? I've seen some tweets about this, and in the courtroom at that point, the jury looked confused and they took notes in their notebooks, and a lot of them seemed to also pin that moment. So that's all with Allie McCabe. She's done for her testimony, and the state calls Colin Albert, and we're all just like, let's go. We know that the Commonwealth is just going to tiptoe a lot of questions around with Colin, but the really exciting thing is going to be the cross-exam by the defense, which will happen the next day. So Colin comes on the stand. He said he was over at a friend's house early in the night drinking, and then he goes over to 34 Fairview to celebrate his cousin's birthday. He says that he was there for about an hour and a half. He doesn't remember what time he arrived, but he specifically remembers that he leaves at 12:10 a.m. He also says that he texted Allie for a ride, and she arrives at 12:10 to pick him up. He testified that he left from the side door, and that's when he sees his Aunt Nicole and his Uncle Brian, but we heard from Nicole that she actually went through the foyer door, and that's where she bumped into him, so there's just a little discrepancy with that. So he also says that he knows John O'Keefe because he was one of his neighbors. He lived just about 2 to 3 houses away from him, and he would see him when he was just driving and coming and going. He would wave at him. He knew that his parents were friends with him, and John O'Keefe would always wave back to him, but they never had any other interactions than that. So Colin Albert also testifies that he never saw John O'Keefe on January 28th or 29th. So this is Colin Albert on the stand yesterday. He took a page out of all of his family's book with the grandpa attire. But this is the real Colin Albert. I have seen a bunch of pictures of him that are circulating on Twitter. He's either flicking the camera off or he's got his fists clenched like this. He did testify that he doesn't have social media anymore, so somebody got to all these screen grabs before he could delete his pages. This is one more photo, Colin in the middle, and you can see his fist. This is taken just a few weeks after John O'Keefe died, and it looks like he has bruising and scabs on his hands that are still healing. So this is the one photo I'm very curious to know if they're going to get to enter into evidence, because this would be very damning for the Commonwealth. But this is what Colin wore on the stand today. This is what he looked like, and we will be back tomorrow for day 13.